When I was a kid, my parents would sometimes drop me off at my aunt and uncle's place for the weekend. They lived out in the countryside on a small farm. For me, it was like stepping into another world. Wide open fields, old barns, woods that seemed endless. But what I really looked forward to was spending time with my two cousins, who were about the same age as me. We spent our days doing what farm kids usually do, running wild, building forts, daring each other to climb the tallest trees. But sometimes we crossed the boundary line. Just half a mile away was another property, an old farm, abandoned for decades. The house and outbuildings were still standing broken and silent, just waiting for someone foolish enough to explore them, and we were the perfect fools. To us, it was a goldmine. Broken barns, collapsed stables, rusted tools left behind, and of course, the house. My cousins told me the rumors. A man who lost his mind, murdered his whole family with an axe, then hanged himself inside. Now, his spirit was doomed to roam the halls, still hunting for victims. Classic ghost story stuff. Even at that age, I knew they were probably just trying to scare me, but in a setting like that, it was hard not to believe. One summer afternoon, we decided to play hide and seek. When it was my turn to hide, I sprinted straight for the abandoned house. I climbed the sagging stairs into what had once been the living quarters. The air inside was heavy, like the walls themselves were holding their breath. Furniture was still there, covered in dust. Dishes shattered across the floor. Books crumbled with age. It looked as if the family had simply vanished, leaving everything behind. I found a small room with a closet still filled with long black dresses. Jackpot. I slipped inside, pulled the folding door shut, and crouched in the darkness, knees pressed against my chest. A single beam of light slipped through a crack in the door, keeping me company. I waited and waited. The game stretched on longer than I expected. Minutes passed, then nearly an hour. My eyelids grew heavy, and then, without realizing, I dozed off. When I opened my eyes, it was pitch black. Night had fallen. My cousins were nowhere to be found. They must have gone home, leaving me behind. Panic rose in my chest. I shifted to stand up, but my leg had cramped so badly that I had to sit still, biting my lip, waiting for it to pass. That's when I heard it. A door downstairs, slamming shut. At first, I thought maybe one of my cousins came back, but the footsteps that followed told a different story. They were heavy, slow, deliberate, with a dull thud after every second step. Not the footsteps of a child. They climbed the stairs. The air inside the closet grew hotter, heavier. The footsteps paused in the hall, then resumed, accompanied by a slow dragging sound, something heavy scraping across the wooden floorboards, and then the smell, faint at first, then stronger. Sweet, sour, putrid, like fresh roadkill left too long in the sun. The steps reached the doorway of the bedroom. They stopped. My heart hammered so loud, I thought it would give me away. The silence stretched on, unbearable, until finally, the steps continued, moving. Across the room, then down the hall. I almost opened the door, almost ran. But then three things happened at once. That rotting smell slammed into me, stronger than ever. I heard breathing inside the closet with me, and I felt hot breath against the back of my neck. That was enough. I exploded out of the closet, stumbling through the dark house, crashing into furniture and broken walls. Behind me, footsteps, fast, chasing me. I didn't look back. I ran until I burst out the front door into the moonlit night. When I finally turned, there was nothing. Silence. Just the chirp of crickets. But I didn't stop running until I made it all the way back to my aunt and uncle's house. When I arrived, a police car was already in the driveway. My parents were there too, frantic. My cousins had come home hours earlier, unable to find me. The police had already searched every building on the abandoned farm. They insisted no one was there, but years later, one of my cousins finally told me the part they had never admitted. While searching for me, they thought they saw me standing in the upstairs window of that very room. Only, it wasn't me. It was another boy. A boy they didn't recognize, smiling, waving for them to come upstairs. And all the while, I was asleep in the closet. Beat of silence, music fades, then swells again. That wasn't the only time I crossed paths with something I couldn't explain. A few months ago, I was at my friend's house down the block. I'm 16 now, one of the oldest kids in our neighborhood. There's me, Dan, my closest friend Ellen, Johnny, Daniela, Nick, and Tom. The youngest at only 12. Not many kids live on our street, so we all kind of stuck together. Our Friday night tradition was Manhunt, a big, sprawling hide-and-seek game played in the dark across the block. It was our version of excitement in a quiet area with too much space and not enough people. That night, it was our turn to hide. Dan and I teamed up, instead of staying near the others. He suggested we try something daring Mr. Nelson's old house. Mr. Nelson had died years ago. His house sat empty ever since. Windows boarded up, lawn overgrown, no one daring to move in. A perfect place to hide. We snuck into the backyard, near the lake. I crouched down in the bushes, but Dan wanted to push it further. He slipped inside. The house through a sliding window. I stayed put, nerves buzzing. Minutes dragged on. Finally, I saw two kids from the other team searching the backyard. They passed without spotting me. Perfect. Time to make a run for home base. I looked up toward the house, hoping Dan would see me and follow. And there he was standing at the upstairs window, looking right down at me. I waved. He didn't move. Just stared, confused. I went to the open window, climbed inside, and called for him. But before I could even shout his name again, I heard a whisper close by. Ducci. I spun around. Dan was sitting right there in the living room. He hadn't gone upstairs at all. My blood turned cold. At that exact moment, both of us looked up at the ceiling. Creaak. Dot. Footsteps. Dot. Coming from above. We didn't wait. We bolted out the window, sprinting back to Nick's house, where we called the game off completely. Later, we told Dan's dad what happened. He didn't believe us at first, but he agreed to check the house with us. He'd been close friends with Mr. Nelson and knew the place well. Together, we went upstairs, into the bathroom, the same window where I had seen someone watching me. The room was empty, except for a crumpled, reddish-brown blanket on the floor. We searched the rest of the house. Nothing. Dan's dad said if we ever saw anything else, we'd go straight to the police. It's been months since then. None of us have seen anything. But I know, as sure as I know my own reflection, that someone was in that house that night, watching us, waiting.